black represents the darkness from which we came. The white represents the light in which we now live. And the red represents the passion it takes to live recovered on purpose.
Hello, and welcome to the Saturday morning Recovered on Purpose show. I am so excited to have my guest Shane Fichter here with us today from Havoc Mindset. We've got an incredible story, and we're going to go through that in the beginning portion of this live, and then we're going to go into how we change from the victim mindset to the overcomer mindset. And obviously the story that we're talking about today is going to go into that and how Shane overcame that himself and now helps people in his life and in his company, Havoc Mindset, to do just that. So Shane, thanks so much for being here, brother.
Oh man, super excited. I loved our first one.
Yeah, thank you so much, brother. So in our first one, we kind of went over your story, and that's why I was able to put it in the description a little bit and talk about, you had this professional fighting career. You had these things going on for you, but what was going on was there was a secret home life that you grew up with that started to leak into your professional career, that started to leak into your character and your personality, not really by your own choice necessarily at the time, but how would you explain that to everybody out here?
Yeah, man. Just my mom, I grew up with my mom just kind of being really entitled. And I would definitely say that was one of the things that leaked over the most. Like when I was in my addiction, I was definitely caught in this cycle of the world owes me something. I would definitely say that.
Okay. And what do you mean by that? How did your mom's entitlement, or what did that look like for her to be entitled, and how did that leak into your life?
Everything was the world's fault. Nothing was her own fault. And I would say my grandfather. So let me just touch on this. We all have trauma in our life. Yeah. We all have these experiences that happen in our life that we hold ourselves back with. Well, my mom's trauma, she didn't even know it was there. But what had happened, if you want to go back a couple of generations here, is my grandfather was an entrepreneur and he had an affair with his secretary. And my mom caught them having an affair at 8 years old, but she didn't know what was going on. She didn't understand it as an 8-year-old, right? So my grandfather starts kind of spoiling her and giving her everything that she wanted in the fear of the fact that she might talk and say something. Well, about 10 months later, it comes out that my grandfather did have an affair. And my mom was it hit her really hard. She pretty much knew at 8 years old. And then when she found that out, she's like, man, I knew this whole time. And the crazy thing is when I talked to my mom later in life about that, who's now passed, but when I talked to her later in life, she didn't even realize that was trauma for her. And then my mom never got she never had to take accountability for anything she did. And this definitely reflected into her life of the world owes me something and things need to be given to me. And I feel like when this happens, we try to control our reality. You know what I mean? We're trying to control our emotions and control what happens in our life. And this a lot of times reflects over into drug addiction.
Yeah. So how did she was entitled and didn't have to take responsibility for things and that kind of stuff. But how did that example cause that in your life? What were the specific things that were going on that caused it in your life to learn it? And then how did that make you act?
Yeah. So my mom never reprimanded me for anything. She always gave me what I wanted, but never gave me what I needed. As a child, you need a lot of love and care. And my mom didn't give that. We jumped around a lot when I was a kid. I went to 9 different schools in elementary school. And we were always living with her friends or my uncle. We never really had a place to live, and this caused a lot of chaos. And, I think that also kind of reflected onto my entitlement. Why don't I get this family life and this life that everybody else has? And I was angry, my father committed suicide when I was 13. And I feel like this just added to it as well. I was so angry that my father was never there. So my mom left my father when I was 3 years old because he didn't want to settle down. My father actually was a pretty big supplier of cocaine in the north part of California, and he didn't want to settle down. And then when I was 13, I tried calling him. And when he heard my name, he literally hung up the phone. And in the background, I could hear like another wife and kids and things like that. Like he had a family, so somebody was good enough for him to settle down with, just not us. And then about 6 months later, my father committed suicide. And I always told myself like this didn't affect me because I was always mad at him. I was like, what's the point of being like upset and hurt by somebody that doesn't really give a crap to be around? And I also held on to that for most of my life. And I feel like when I was about 2-3 years ago, I even did like a visualization practice with a coach, and he put me back in that setting of when I found out my father committed suicide. And so this thing that I always told myself through my whole life that didn't affect me actually hit me really hard, and I broke down into tears.
So how did that, thank you for sharing that, because we didn't go over that in our last episode.
Yeah.
How did that visualization with that coach work? How did he ask you to get into that state?
Yeah.
And what was the safe place that you were in to be able to go back there?
We would do Wim Hof, and I do this with a lot of my clients now too, the Wim Hof breathing technique. It just completely puts you in a different state. It settles you down, calms you down. And then he'd have me keep my eyes closed. And he took me back, just kind of walking me through like, pretty much like a dream. You know what I mean? You're trying to like picture this in your head. And he took me back to when I called my dad and he hung up on me. And then he took me back to finding out from my mom that he committed suicide. And it's crazy, man. There's a lot of things that happen in our life that we hold on to and we just bottle up and we don't think it affects us, but it's huge impact.
Yeah. And while he was taking you back there, was he like asking you how you felt, what you saw? Did he make you like name 3 things that you saw and name 3 feelings you had, that kind of stuff?
Yes, definitely, man. Definitely. Sounds like you've been through one of these. Yeah, he totally did, man. He was like, what is your mom doing? What's the scenery look like? Where are you guys at when you found this out? And we were actually in the Harvest House. So my mom lived in a drug rehab facility with me and my sister when I was 13. And that's where we were. We were in that facility. So, all of these things created the story that I would tell in my own head. We all see the world through a filter, and that's what I call our paradigm. And that story is just ringing in our head. And, my story was, I'm not enough. I'm just a poor kid from the ghetto. I'm a drug addict like my own mom. And I'm, had a lot of abandonment issues because my dad, pretty much chose another family over us.
Yeah, I hear that. So what were in your story, in your paradigm, before you did this work, before you went back there and everything, you said that you felt anger when you thought about it? Am I right
Definitely.
with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
And then after you did this work where you went back to that scene, what were the actual emotions that you discovered?
Yeah. Thank you. A lot of anger and a lot of disappointment. I know that I felt worthlessness. I felt like I wasn't good enough, which is actually the core thought for anybody, like anybody that has a paradigm, like fear of success, fear of failure. All of these things stem back to I'm not enough. And that was the thing that was ringing through my head.
All right. And so we're gonna come back to that because we've already gotten to the solution. But I want to talk about while you still had that story, you're 13 years old, you find that out. And where does your life go to where you find yourself as a professional fighter? What happens in those 7, 8, 9 years?
Yeah, man. So from 13, I actually didn't start fighting until about 15 years after that. And, I always tell everybody, man, our life is literally just preparing us and molding us into the people that we're supposed to be on this planet. If I didn't have these things happen in my life, I wouldn't be the person I am today.
Yeah.
So after my father committed suicide, I started partying. I started smoking, drinking. And then by the time I was 17, I took my first Vicodin. And what I always tell people is, for like, the feeling I had when I took that Vicodin was, oh, this is me. Like, I found myself. Like, this is where I belong. And that turned into an opiate addiction. And then I always kept a job. I had good work ethic because my uncle was a very big impact on my life in that. Like, I lived with my uncle for a while, and he made me work. He made me earn my keep. And, but I was in the closet taking pills all the time. So that created this opiate addiction. And then by the time I was 25, I moved up to Montana. I had moved up to Montana when I was 21 years old for some drywall work, and, carried that opiate addiction and dabbling in some other things too, meth and, everything else under the sun at that age. And then I get up to Montana and I'm working, and I end up not being able to find any opiates that could help me out except Dilaudid. And at that time, Dilaudids, they hit you a lot harder when you do them IV. So I had this guy that I thought was my friend, those people that we surround ourselves when we're in our addiction that we think care about us so much. And he gave me my first shot. So that was the moment I became addicted to using drugs IV, which then carried over into being addicted to heroin and using meth. And when I met my wife, who at the time was my girlfriend, she was an alcoholic. So then I became an alcoholic as well. Yeah, I can go. Let me get all the way to the fighter here. So what's up?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I ended up getting locked up by my probation officer. I was on the run. I was on the Suboxone program, but I would sell off half my Suboxone and then buy other things. So when I got locked up, I was under the influence of, or at least had it in my system, meth, heroin, Suboxone, methadone, alcohol, and Oxycontins. And I ended up going through like a 35-day withdrawal. This was probably the darkest. Well, I would actually say the darkest time of my life was when I was in my addiction. Right before this arrest, I actually overdosed a couple times. Not to the extent of your overdose, man. I've seen your overdose. It was not like that. You have a pretty, that's a crazy experience, man. Every time I see that video, I'm like, man, this guy's strong. You've overcome so much. And there was this teeter-totter at that time where I just didn't know if I wanted to live or die. I liked the feeling of getting that teeter-totter when I would do a shot. Like, I like getting to the point where I almost didn't know if I was going to live.
Yeah.
And then I go through this 35-day withdrawal, and a lot of people ask, well, man, how is it 35 days? Well, the drugs that they actually give you to get off of opiates stay in your system the longest. So I go through that, and my mind and this story that I've been telling myself, though, was still ringing in my head. So that 35-day withdrawal didn't even knock me off my horse, because I go in to get OR'd, and I'm talking to the judge, and she's like, how are you going to find a place to live when you get out of here? And I'm like, well, I'm going to go stay at the Annex House. It's a sober living house here in Bozeman. At the time, I was in Bozeman, Montana. And she said, well, they won't accept you while you're incarcerated, so I have to release you first. So where are you going to go stay if I release you and they don't accept you? And I started to say I was going to go stay at one of the slummiest motels. And for the first time, dude, I could hear, the bullshit coming out of my mouth. And I literally looked at my PO and I go, just leave me here until I go to treatment, because if you let me out, I'm going to mess this up again. And, this is where I feel a lot of change happened. I talked about, trying to control our environment and having control issues. Well, this was the point where I let go. I was like, this is where I'm at. I don't got anything on the outside. So I just let everything go, started working in the kitchen, started working on myself, started meditating, started journaling, started running, started working out. And dude, I just catched a momentum that I just wouldn't get off of. In my mind, I was like, if I'm not getting better, I'm going backwards.
Yeah.
And this led me to, pre-release. I get out and I end up going to the Metro. And just remembering, like, as a youngster, what I wanted to do with my life, what I love to do. I wrestled through high school, did a little bit of jiu-jitsu after that, but not much training of MMA. But I go to these fights at the Metro and was just like, man, I love this. And this is what I want to do. So then I channeled that same compulsive and addictive behavior, all the trauma that I had been through, all the struggles that I had, I channeled all of that energy towards MMA.
Yeah. Awesome. I love it. And we're going to hop in the comments real quick. Carrie's coming in saying good morning. What's up, Carrie? Good to see you always. We have Catherine coming in with the page No Longer Silence coming in. Good morning, Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
Good morning,
What's
Mike.
up, Mike?
Yeah. We got Mike from Richmond, Kentucky coming in. And sober date of 6/1/16. Thanks for paving the way, brother. We got Thunder Bay, Ontario, Canada coming in. We have February 8th, 2016, Northern California.
Congrats.
Northern Arkansas. Bara's got 2,126 days. Let's go. What's up, Matt? Good to see you, brother, always. Matt and I just did a show on Wednesday. And hello from Nepal. What's up, Rufus? Good to see you. Then Monica here again from Central Missouri. I'm here for my son as an addict getting ready to get released from prison. I'm wanting all the knowledge I can get to try to keep him clean. I've been going through this with him for at least 10 years now, praying that the light comes on for him. His children need their father. Amen. So let's touch on that a little bit, because that's something that I believe, and I have friends that do this, where they help people go from prison back into society, right? And there's a recidivism rate in the prison system of like 87%, right? Like people that go into prison and come out, that's a thing because of a mindset, right? And I built a company in 2011, 12, and 13 with someone who I'm super grateful for. The company's still going to this day. And we built a company from his apartment with one truck, a bunch of pesticides and stuff. He did all the servicing, and I went door to door and sold accounts, door to door to door. And I sold like 967 accounts that year. But the reason I was able to do that was because every single morning at like 7 a.m., he would show up at my door and pick me up, you know? And the thing is he, the 6 months before we met, he had just gotten out of 13 years in prison.
Wow.
So there's this mindset that where you surround yourself with the right people, and when you make the right decision to do whatever it takes, like I'm not going back to where I was, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'm willing to work hard. I'm willing to grow these habits that are going to take me to success. I'm willing to read. I'm willing to not talk to the people that take me back to the place that I was. That's a huge thing. When you're networking with people that are going like this, you have no choice but to go like this, right?
Yeah.
And I talk about this thing called Friendventory. I actually just wrote an article about it, where you are, because I heard this speech by one of the best motivational speakers ever in like my first 6 months of recovery. I'm sitting in this airport and I'm listening to him and I'm drinking coffee. And he says, you are the sum average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. We've all heard that. But as I'm sitting there journaling, I'm like, if that's true, then I should be able to actually like quantify this. I should be able to write this down and figure out exactly where my emotions and thoughts and income is coming from. So at that time, I paused the video. I wrote down the 5 people that I spend most time with. I wrote down the 3 thoughts and conversations that I have with them the most each. I wrote down the 3 feelings that I associated to each of them the most. And then I wrote down what I thought their income was per month each. And then next to that, I made a list of the 15 thoughts and conversations that I had just written down. Then a list of the 15 feelings that I had just written down. Then a list of the 5 incomes. Then I circled the top 3 thoughts and conversations from all 5 people put together. I circled them. I was like, holy cow, that's all I think about. And then I circled the 3 feelings that I associated with each of them. I was like, holy cow, that's how I always feel. And then I added up all the incomes, all 5 incomes, divided it by 5, and it was almost exactly my income. And you'll hear people that say, yeah, like people, I can be with them, and I'm like, I can stay myself. I'm not going to go down to that level. I just, like them for this reason or this reason. But it is scientifically proven that the people you surround yourself with, the attitude, the character, the feelings, and the income and success is more contagious than a cold when you're with them. So if somebody has a cold and a negative mindset, you are more likely to catch the negative mindset than you are the cold. And with that, and the reason why we're talking about that is because as he's coming out this time, the number one is find people with him that he can surround himself with. First, make a list of the people he is not going to talk to. Make a list of the people that will absolutely be an influence to take him down. And then make that a hard line. I call it a hard line. Doesn't matter if they call, doesn't matter if they show up to the door, doesn't matter any of that. I'm not with you in life anymore because I don't want to go back to where I was. And then start networking. You can call. What I started doing at that point, I was like, holy cow. Like, if that's happening and these two people in my life are always talking about anxiety, always talking about depression, always talking about how much they hate their job and stuff like that, then, I don't have to like call them and say, hey, I can't hang out with you anymore. All I did, instead of hitting them up to hang out when I was bored or I wanted to do something, I would reach out to people that I aspired towards. And I'd never done that before where like, I'm just going to reach out to this person and ask how their day is, ask what they're doing, because if you ask somebody how their day is and what they're doing, you're going to see their mindset come through the phone in a 5-minute conversation. The same as you will when you hit up that other friend that tells you, well, I just had a crappy day at work and I'm feeling okay. I'm going to go do this and this. The thing is some people will say, yeah, I'm having an excellent day, man. I just got done taking my kids to get some shakes. Now I'm going home and I'm going to work on this article that I'm writing for a paper, or something like that, whatever it is. And that will motivate you to level up to working with them. In my early recovery, I would not hang out with anybody that could not tell me what step they were on. For me, I had to know that somebody was working hard on their recovery because I wanted to work hard on my recovery so badly. I never wanted to go back to using drugs. So I made sure that everybody that I was allowing to get into my mind was either teaching me how to recover, how to do the steps, how to grow in life. I was at the same level with people, like we were working on our steps, we were working on our recovery or something like that, or I was specifically helping someone do the work. That's it. I wasn't going to be hanging out with friends that, weren't doing the work. They were sober, for 6-7 months or whatever, but they're sitting on their 4th step. They've been working on it for 4 months when no, you've been sitting on it for 4 months. So when he comes out, the first priority is finding out who his circle is going to be. First, who his circle is not going to be, then who his circle is going to be. Right? Okay.
It's funny you say that. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It's funny you say that because, yeah, man, like, when you get in the pre-release, you get kind of stuck with all those guys, and I found myself being a loner, but like things were different. I was showing up on time. I was doing all these things. And then when I got out of pre-release, I went to the Grindhouse and started training with Will Grunhauser. And the guys that go and roll jiu-jitsu and train, a lot of them are lawyers. A lot of them are, business owners, dude. It's amazing that you say that. And not only that, but Will Grunhauser changed my life. I was able to like transition a lot of the beliefs and ideas from MMA right into life, right into business. So,
it's funny that you mentioned that. One of the lawyers at the Grindhouse was my attorney for the case of the video that you see.
Dang, Mike? Was it Mike? Nice, dude.
Black
Love Mike.
Mike.
He's a black belt Mike now. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, that's a great place to start networking, whether it be fighting or any place where there's a community coming together to do something that they're passionate about. If he's not a fighter, he can do, he can go to, there's fellowship meetings. Obviously, if he's an addict, he should do that. But there's all kinds of different entrepreneurial groups. He can go to meetup.com and you can find people that like what you like. There's hiking groups, there's biking groups, there's tennis groups. There's all these different things that whatever someone likes, they can find a community And anyone that specifically seeks community to do something that they're passionate about is good for your life.
Yeah.
It's good for your life, period. Okay, so Shane, you are now fighting, right? You go to the Metro, you change your mindset, like that is what I want to do. And at this time, how much clean time do you have?
About 2 years.
Okay, so you have about 2 years clean. You
Yep.
find this passion, you find this thing you want to do, and you change your mind and you say, I want to do that. And you're like 28 years old at the time, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. 28 and a half. And the crazy thing is, that's where I met you first.
Yeah.
I first met Adam at the gym, dude. He came in, in his recovery, trying to find something to just kind of express himself. And yeah, that's where we first met.
So I was trying to find recovery at the time.
Oh, okay.
And that's part of my story also. I'm like, I literally went to an MMA gym thinking they might be able to beat clean into me. So guys, when you've heard me say that, this is Shane. This is him. Like I was literally telling him, kick me as hard as you can. Kick me as hard as you can. And Will was like, hey, calm down on him. You were like, nah, he told me to.
Yeah. Heck yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. All right. So you make that decision, you want to fight. So then what happens?
Yeah, so I start training, dude, literally like a heroin addict. That same mindset that all of us addicts have, where like you will not take no for an answer. That's the way I went in there and trained. And I already had a lot of grit and a lot of toughness, from being on the streets. One of my main attributes was that I could take a shot. And my very first training partner when I got into the grindhouse was a guy named Tyler Vogel, who was a pro at the time at 185. And he had just got done fighting at the World Series of Fighting. And one day we're training. I've been like 4 or 5 months in, and we ended up with 4-ounce gloves on. And sometimes those things get out of hand. And we're just like going to town. And Tyler's trying with everything he's got to knock me out. But I'm just still coming forward, to the point to where Will walks up and he's like, hey, Tyler, chill out. This guy's only been training for about 4 months.
Yeah.
He hasn't even ever fought before. And then I ended up saying sorry. And he goes, no, you're good. He's like, whenever you're ready to have a fight, you just let me know. And I'm like, really? These guys have all been training their whole life. You think I'm ready for that? And he goes, yeah, but you can't train that. And the reason I like to point that out is because that's the addictive, like not taking no for an answer type of mindset that a lot of us addicts have. And you can tap into that. I mean, Adam has done that with his business. I've done that with my businesses after my MMA career. But being that kind of fighter, I had some really awesome fights. Everybody liked to buy tickets to my fights because whether I lost or I won, I put on a show. But that also did a lot of damage to my head. And then before my fight career, I had also taken beer bottles to the head, had those overdoses. And, the drug use honestly wasn't very good either for my concussion, like the how easily I could get concussed, right? Yeah. And the very beginning of my career, I had a fight that was like Rock'em Sock'em Robots with Billy Henderson, where we were just going to town. I had a fight where I was choked unconscious about 6 times. If you watch my highlight reel, you can see both of these fights. And the end of that fight, I got choked unconscious 6 times and I wouldn't tap. I told myself, I am not tapping. I am not giving up. And the ref couldn't see my face. So I ended up going in and out, really freaking everybody in the audience out. Even the commentators in the commentation, like on the recording, are like, what is keeping this fight going?
Yeah.
And, in a very short period of time, because I fought like a heroin addict, like I trained like a heroin addict, I literally even trained myself into the hospital with rhabdomyolysis exertion because of that addictive mindset.
Yeah.
I end up doing a lot in the sport in a very short period of time. I fought in Thailand, fought and trained with some of the best in the world, fought in a world tournament in Colorado, Drew Dauber, Alistair Overeem, Gilbert Burns, just awesome, awesome fighters. And me and my training partner get invited out to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We had turned in some resumes with a fight agent and some fight videos with him so he could check us out. And we get invited out to Fort Lauderdale, Florida to train. And we're training with Henry Hoof at Hard Knocks 365, like I said, with a lot of those big names. And while I'm sparring, I walk into a left hand that barely touches me, just barely touches me on the chin. And I go stiff as a board. I was out for about 2 minutes. gapped out the whole day. They had to tell me over and over and over what happened, and it wouldn't register in my head. I guess I wandered around like for 3 hours just asking the same question over and over again. And 2 days later, I tried getting back on the mat, shadow boxing. And one of the coaches, Cammy Brazzini's like, no, man, you need to sit down. You need to just sit down. And I guess he was going behind my back and talking to my training partner, Kobe, and was like, hey, man, when you guys get back to Montana, I would just suggest that you just have Shane chill, like tell him to go fly fishing or something, just hang out. And then before I go to leave, he ends up coming up to me and saying, hey, I've watched guys progress in this sport, and then they get to a point where they get that glass chin and they can't take a shot. And he's like, there's a lot of prefrontal cortex damage there, and a lot of guys ignore it. And that's where they make a big mistake. Yep. And I'm like, yeah, man, but I've only been fighting for a little while. But he was like, yeah, but you've had some damaging fights, right? And I said, yeah. He goes, I want you to come talk to the doctor that you talked to when you got knocked out. And I literally looked at him and go, I talked to a doctor on the day I got knocked out. And he's like, yeah. No. I'm like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, all right. So I go talk to this doctor, and we started jumping into my fights. And then we started jumping into my life before my fights. I've been stomped on in a jail cell. And then we started talking about my drug addiction and my drug use. And all of it pretty much added up to a decision that I decided, being 34 years old and having 2 kids, to walk away from MMA, and that was all I was working for. All my goals, all my dreams, and everything that I was aspiring to do was taken out from underneath me. And this is a point where a lot of people in addiction would have a relapse. But because of the mindset work, because of the journaling, the meditating, paying attention to who I'm surrounding myself with, the positive self-talk, the affirmations, the lifting weights, the training, all of it, I knew exactly where I was going. Like, I was already speaking at Rimrock. I was already telling my story up there. I knew I wanted to be a motivational speaker. I didn't quite know I wanted to be a coach. Just knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur and a motivational speaker. And the whole time I was doing MMA, I did drywall my whole life. So the whole time I was doing MMA, I was doing patchwork on the side, drywall patches. And this was kind of an idea that I had already journaled about, was starting a drywall business that was niched out, focusing on patchwork and, cracks and holes in people's houses and little remodels and stuff like that. So, when you talk about the people I surrounded myself with, not only did I surround myself with all the people that were in the gym, but I also surrounded myself with sponsors. I went out and started hitting up sponsors to sponsor me in MMA. And I had such a sure certainty about where I was going and that I was going to make it to the UFC. And the community of Billings, man, was just awesome, man. They picked me up. A lot of them took care of me. Harvey Singh, Matt the Painter, just a lot of really good guys, but a lot of them were business owners. Well, all of them were business owners, but a lot of them were construction workers, contractors, in the real estate game, all of that. So when I came back, I started calling all these guys that a lot of them mentored me, and I called them and I'm like, I'm doing drywall. And then I switched that same addictive mindset, that same drive towards entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And the patch guy, the first year, did $350,000. So gross income. And Amen. I created a name, man. I created a household name.
Amen. Yeah. And you talk about, switching that mindset from the addiction to basically whatever you're doing in your life, right?
Yes.
And one of my earlier podcasts on the Recovered on Purpose show was with Dr. Darlene Mayo, and she's a neuroscientist, neurosurgeon, and she came on and gave us 5 mind hacks for our life in recovery. And she actually said that after doing her studies and all of that, that addicts in recovery actually have the ability to create good habits more than anyone else, because in our lives and in our addictions, we were so wired to do these addictions, to do these habits that were bad for us, but we did them every single day for so long that our brain was wired with these train tracks, basically, of doing what we need to do. So if instead of having this like this goal right here being drugs, if we could channel something that we're passionate about, something that we're purposeful about, we're actually able to achieve things with a higher percentage likelihood than people that didn't go through addiction. And I think that it's just like, I mean, that's obviously what I believe. That's obviously what I practice, because I was a full-blown heroin and meth addict also, IV and everything. And I have to be using it for good now. I have to be constantly picking up good habits, constantly letting things go, and constantly writing down my lists and my affirmations and things like that. Because if I'm not, then I don't want my mind to go back to that place where it's spiraling to places where I don't want to go. Bad thoughts. I don't really think that I don't believe that I will ever use again. And I'm confident to say that, like, I've recovered. I don't believe my mind could ever go back to a place where I'm going to use drugs, but I can go back to those addictive mindsets of like anxiety or worry or sadness or whatever it is, loneliness, all those things. If I'm not directing my mind towards purpose, towards my goal, towards what I want to do with my life and serve people, right? So, okay, so let's go into hacks and different ways that the listeners that are listening to this can take control of these habits that used to be bad and start going towards something that is good, right? So how could somebody out there that might be searching for passion or searching for a purpose or looking for what they really want to do with their life outside of their 9 to 5, how could they find that purpose or that thing that they want to do?
Man, so there is an exercise that we do in my program called Ikigai, and this is huge, okay? Pretty much what you love. So Ikigai is 4 circles is how they do the diagram, right? And in this circle, you have what you love, everything that you love. And over in this circle, you have everything that you're good at. And over in this circle, you have everything that you can get paid for. And over in this circle, you have everything that the world needs. Okay. When all of these circles are tightly like laced into each other, right in the center of all those circles, that's your Ikigai. Right? That's the thing that you're passionate about, that you can create an income around, that the world needs, that will help people. And the reason this is so powerful in this day and age, and that this exercise works so well, is because you guys know you can literally get paid for anything these days. Social media and the internet has changed everything when it comes to a quote unquote job or career. So one of the things I would suggest you guys try doing is make a list. Okay. You're going to ask yourself 4 questions. The first question is going to be, what do I love? And you're just going to brain dump this. Okay. Just make a huge list. Just put out every single thing that you love and just write that down. Okay. The next question that you're going to ask yourself is, what am I good at? Once again, brain dump, just write it all down, right? Just everything out of your brain. Then the next thing that you are going to ask yourself is, what can I get paid for? Just dump it out. Now, the point of this whole exercise too, as you start going through this, is to find the ones that are in multiple categories, right? So then the next question is, what does the world need? Right? What does the world need that I can implement into the world? Now, a lot of times for a guy like me or a guy like Adam, helping people and service is going to be in all 4 of those categories. And you know what? We get to wake up and do what we love every single day. It's our career. Dude, this not only because you're an addict and you're just going to hit this thing like crazy, but also the fact that you get joy out of what you're doing means that the hard times are going to be easier and the good times are going to be that much better. You get to wake up every day feeling excited about working, feeling excited about going outside of your comfort zone.
Yes. Yes. And when you find what you love, find what you're good at, find what you can bring to the world, and those 3 things coupled together, right? And if you do them with passion, if you do them with value, right? There's a possibility you can get paid for them. A lot of followers here, a lot of people in recovery don't necessarily go at these things yet to think about getting paid for them, right? I've been doing Recovered on Purpose for 2 years and 7 months and 29 days today. That's how long I've been doing Recovered on Purpose. The first thing that I have done that I'm selling, other than my book that's not an income source necessarily, but the first thing I've done that I've sold is this course. And this whole time, I have been creating content. I've been growing a following. I've been going to masterminds. I've been buying courses. I've been getting coaching and doing all these different things because I was passionate about helping my community. And now with people starting to get into the course and people, going through it and starting to share their stories and doing stuff like that, now I'm able to start thinking about it as a vocation, as something that I can start doing for work because I'm actually bringing something of value to the world, right? And the mission is way bigger than me. And that's what I had to get to. I had this point where this discovery point where am I going to be able to actually fulfill the vision in my mind where I'm helping tens of thousands of addicts share their stories? Am I going to be able to do that and do it with impact on each and every one of them if I'm doing this for free the whole time? And the answer is no, because I remember the first time I bought a course. It was I had bought coaching in my addiction. I had done courses and stuff in my addiction, but I don't really count that. In my recovery, I was 4 or 5 months clean and sober. I was living at my sister's and I was trying to find what I wanted to do. And I came across this thing called Kingdom Builders Academy. And it was like how to build a brand, how to, build a coaching brand to help the people that you want to help. And all of these seemed like it would really, really help me. And I got on a call with Tamara, who's still a really close friend of mine today. And she's a New York Times bestseller. And, I get on this call with her and I'm talking with her. And then I decide, I'm going to go with this because I see that it's going to add value to me. And what happened when I purchased the course and I committed to doing the course, the instant that I actually made that commitment with my money and my mind and my heart, something changed in me about my own self-confidence, my own self-worth, my own self-value, because I just invested in myself, right? And this is something that I haven't done in so long because investing in myself, I wasn't able to invest in myself in my addiction. I was able to do things, but none of it was with that heart of like, I'm actually going to be able to do something with this, because there was always this thing in the back of my head, like, you're going to die of your addiction, dude. And now I'm like, holy cow, okay, I have this life ahead of me. I'm not going to overdose and die anymore. And now I'm building something in my recovery and I'm willing to invest in myself to do it. And that's why I made this shift. Because I want, and that's why I'm having podcasts like this and doing the shows every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The reason why, and why I'm bringing people like you on, is because I believe this community of addicts in recovery, we need to change our mindset of going from the 12 steps and treatment being our personal development for life. That is our personal development to find recovery from drug and alcohol addiction. Mm-hmm. It is absolutely valuable. You absolutely take it into every part of your life. The 12 steps work in so many different areas of my life. However, there's so much knowledge, there's so much purpose, there's so much wisdom out there that we need to be grasping onto as well. Because all these other communities are killing it. Whether it be real estate or whether it be, women, mothers, single mothers, or whoever it is, are working in their niche on personal development with power and purpose and all of these things. Why are we not doing it? Because addicts in recovery 100% have so much talent. We think that because we went through addiction, that we're still that person, that we're still this not capable of those dreams we had before we ever did drugs. And that's just not true. We have recovered now, and now that we're in recovery, we have an entire community of people that need us and only us.
So
because
true.
You can't touch an addict if you haven't been through it.
Yeah. And the power of investing in yourself, man, changed my life. It really did. I think of money as energy, right? And when I gave that energy, I got that energy. Amen. And what Jay Shetty says too. So always have belief in the direction you're going and you will come through. And Jay Shetty also says, serve first and the money will come. You know what I mean? Serve first and the
Amen.
money will come. Don't focus on the money, focus on solving problems for people. Right.
Yes.
And I actually have another exercise, if you don't mind me sharing it, to help
Let's
you
do it.
guys find a lot of the skills and talents that you have as an addict that you never thought were there.
Yeah.
So when I went to CCP, they did this exercise called a lifeline, right? You wrote out your life's timeline. And what they're doing is they're showing you how to get and show you how you escalated to get to your crime, right?
Mm.
But I switched it, right? When after I got out and I'm sitting there, crazy thing is like after I got out of doing MMA and I had to retire, I was like, man, now I don't have that coach, right? Because I had Will as that MMA coach. I was like, I need another coach, somebody that has that outside perspective. So I jumped on with a coach, invested in myself, and dude, that changed my life forever. But through working with him, I came up with this exercise for myself. I wrote out the same lifeline that I did, the same timeline that I did in CCP, but then I put it all into categories, right? So I would suggest if you guys are interested in doing this, write out every good and bad highlight from the time you were born to where you are now, okay? Just all the experiences, all the stuff that happened, okay? The good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. And then take the experiences that gave you limiting beliefs, the ones that you hold yourself back with in your head, right? Like for me, it was, I'm just a poor kid from the ghetto, right? That was, or my mom, right? My mom used to hem all my clothes and get me like secondhand shoes and stuff like that. That was an experience, you know what I mean? That gave me limiting beliefs. I'm just a poor kid from the ghetto, right?
Yeah.
All those experiences, I want you to put them into one category that says limiting beliefs. And then I want you to put all the other ones in the category that says empowering. Okay.
Mm.
And then what you're going to do is you're going to go through all those experiences that are under the limiting beliefs category. And you're going to write out for each experience, what skills and talents and traits did I adopt from this experience? And it will blow your mind how many things you adapted, right? When I was an addict, I would do anything to get my drug. I would go steal DVDs down at Walmart and then go pawn them at the pawn shop, which is a horrible business model. But through all these experiences, I could see like, dude, I've adapted an entrepreneur-like mindset. I've adapted resilience through a lot of the things that I've done. I'm able to make things happen out of thin air the same way you did when you were trying to get your fix.
Yeah. I love that. And it's funny you say that because one of the 28 exercises in my course is doing that, is getting, except for the limited beliefs and the empowering beliefs.
Yeah.
So if you go through the course, you already have a worksheet to do all of that. I have them categorize it in a different way where they categorize it for experiences that happened before they were using drugs, experience that happened like when they started using drugs, experiences that happened when they were like really deep in their addiction, and then experiences that happened while they were finding recovery and then how they recovered, and then experiences that have happened in their recovery, so that we can always share a message of, empowering addicts by connecting with them, with telling them where we come from, how we started using addiction and started using drugs, how it progressed. Because when we share that part of our story, then addicts that are suffering don't feel alone. Because a lot of times in our addiction, right, we think that we're the only one that could have possibly been through that. We think that we're the only one that could have experienced that thing and struggled this hard with drugs, until someone else shares with us, this is what happened to me when I was 7 years old. That caused me to start thinking this about myself. I started feeling like this. And then I found the solution in alcohol when I was 11. And then and then I go down to I'm homeless or whatever it is, whatever your bottom is. And then when you share these three parts of your story, they're like, wow, I'm not alone. He knows what it's like. He knows how it feels. And he's been where I've been. So then when you share how you recovered, they're in a place to receive direction. And a lot of times we fail to do all 5 parts, because we might share like all of the horrible things about addiction, which we know the horrible things about addiction. It's called a war story, and they're vital to a story. They are vital to a recovery story. However, they are 20% of the most important stuff because there's 5 of them. So we have to add in, how it made us feel. We have to add in how we actually got there and then how we recovered. And we have to talk about why we want to be in recovery, because we have to be living a life in recovery that attracts people. Because I don't know about anybody else out there, but when I was in my addiction, as long as I had drugs, life was good. Life was good for me. I would be okay with having no money, no food, no place to live, as long as I had clean syringes and dope. And the thing is that's for some addicts, for many addicts, that's the life. So we have to show them what life is like in recovery that's better than that. How we're doing this in life now, how we're making these connections now, how we're writing a book now, and we're starting this business now, and we're doing this and this and that. So we have to have all 5 aspects of a recovery story in order to reach the addict suffering with a message that gives them the power of recovery and the hope that is possible for them. So I love those exercises. I love those. And guys, if you want to rewatch this, just come back to this part of it, right? Because there's 2 really good exercises that you can actually do in real time that will help you with your mindset, that will help you find, those things that are limiting. So let's really quickly, let's talk about what exactly a limiting experience is. An experience that causes a limited belief. And let's use an example of what that could be like, right?
Yep. Yeah. So one of the examples I always give is my mom. So when I was 4 years old, my mom would take me to the liquor store and she would give me a $1 food stamp, right? And she would say, honey, go inside and get yourself a sucker and bring mommy out the change. And, she would have me do that 4 or 5 times, and then she would do it a couple times. Next thing you know, she would have a handful of change so that she could get herself a beer, a pack of cigarettes and stuff like that. This is an experience that rang through my childhood telling me this was the first moment I realized that we were poor. This is the first moment in my life where I was like, oh, we're poor. But this is also an entrepreneur-like activity. So this is something that was a limiting belief in my life where I was like, I'm just a poor kid from the ghetto. And then swap it. I'm an entrepreneur that knows how to solve problems, I mean? Make things happen. And my mom raised me with all kinds of I have all kinds of stories around that,
Yeah.
And I think that the hard thing that happens here is when you have that story in your head, it turns into a paradigm, right? And a lot of times, even in our addiction, we're stuck in this paradigm cycle, right? So the story will always bring on thoughts like, I'm just a poor kid from the ghetto, right? Or I like to always use this one as well, is like a guy that thinks he's overweight because his family's overweight, right? Now, he would say that, and the thought would be like, oh, what's the point of going to the gym? I'm going to be fat anyways because my family's fat, And that brings on feelings of despair and feelings of worthlessness. Those feelings are going to turn into actions or lack of actions, like either going to the gym or not going to the gym. And those actions are going to then turn into results, like being unhealthy and things like that. That's going to, and then in turn, that's paradigm and tell him, yeah, you're right. Like you're never going to be anything different. The same thing happens with addicts, right? I'm just an addict. I just need to get my fix. I need to not be sick. And then we have those thoughts, right? And then we feel like anxiousness. We've got to get that drug, right? And that creates the action of going out and getting your drug. And the result is being high, first of all, but then just being right back where you were, right? Dope sick again, just there. And then that feeds that paradigm. That's the cycle you get stuck in. And this is why these limiting beliefs are so impactful in our life. The story that we're telling ourselves in our head can really, really, really mess us up.
Yeah. So guys, that's going to be your action for this week. Write down, find some experiences in your life, right? Some traumatic experiences or some things that happen in your life. And it can go way, 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 way back in your life. Like we actually, from 0 to 5, we're super, super impressionable, the most impressionable to our environment and our surroundings that will mold us into the person that we believe that we are, right? Yeah. So if you, for instance, have an experience where, you were neglected by your mom when you needed a hug or something like that, the really good exercise, like he was talking about, is write that experience out. Talk about how you felt. Talk about what you were thinking. Talk about where you were. Talk about, exactly what happened. Like you were here and you went to reach up and your mom walked by you or something like that. However it happened in your head. And then read it and then ask yourself, what did this make me believe about myself? And what you'll see is there are experiences in our life that will mold us for the rest of our life unless we come to realization, to being able to see when it happened, where it came from, and then switch that mindset like he's talking about, like Shane is talking about. So the exercise for this week, I want you to find at least one limiting experience that you have had in your life that is possibly coming into your thoughts right now. And you always feel free to message me. I would love to hear these so that we can work through them together. If you think of the experience, and you can't think of the limited belief, or if you have a limiting belief and you want to work through to find limiting experience, let's find that together. Okay. This has been an incredible show. Guys, show some love for Shane for coming on here and blessing our community. And Shane, how can people find you?
Yeah, man. Real quick, I want to add one thing right there that Adam talked about, because now a trauma, like a traumatic experience, you guys, doesn't have to be as like crazy as some of ours, right?
Yeah.
Like if you come from like a rich family or a good family, or like a quote unquote like perfect household that you think, I can guarantee you there is trauma in there, lack of love, right? Like a lot of kids, man, like he said, we get impacted very strongly when we're 5 and before, because we're in theta state. And we also don't really understand the world yet. So we misconceive a lot of things, and those things can ripple through your life. So really dig deep on those, on what they might be. It could be your dad yelling at you one time and saying something that just hit you really hard. So it could be anything.
And honestly, while we were talking, one came up for me. I was deciding if I wanted to share it or not, because it actually came up while we were talking about this, and I've never had it come up before. And this is how they work. Once you start the thought process of where your subconscious thoughts are coming from, where your beliefs are coming from, you start to recognize when you get in conversations like this. So I've had this limiting belief for a long time that nobody likes me. Like I could literally like walk in a room and do my best, and like it feels like everyone likes me, but then like when I go home, just like nobody likes me. No one there likes me. And I just remembered where it came from. And it came from recess in elementary. I think I must have been in 2nd or 3rd grade. And there was this kid, James, that always, like, all the boys would be over here, all the girls would be over here, and there would be like one popular girl or whatever and one popular boy, and then the boys would run from here to like deliver messages back and forth, to the boys or girls or whatever. And I never felt included. And when I would try to like add my part in it, or I would add something to say, no one would listen to me, and it felt like nobody liked me, and like I wasn't part of the group, and I just had that memory while we were talking.
Yeah. This is why self-awareness is so huge, man. This is why journaling is so huge. It's just digging into those things.
Yeah.
There's a poem I'll share real quick, and then I'll tell you guys how you can get a hold of me. So there's a poem actually called "The Hole in the Sidewalk," and I could be miswording this, but you guys will get the point. It's called "Hole in the Sidewalk," right? And the poem goes like this, and this shows you why self-awareness is so powerful. I walk down a street. There's a hole in the sidewalk. I don't see it. I fall in. It's not my fault. It takes me forever to get out of the hole. I walk down the same street. There's a hole in the sidewalk. I see the hole. I still fall in. It's a habit. It's not my fault. It still takes me forever to get out of the hole. I walk down the same street. There's a hole in the sidewalk. I fall into the hole. It is my fault. I see where I am, and I see I have awareness, right? I get out of the hole right away. I walk down the same street. I see the hole. I walk around the hole. I walk down a different street. This is the power of self-awareness, right? Like sometimes you're going to fall off the horse. Okay. So don't be hard on yourself about that. But just know that the awareness, the fact that you know, right, the accepting that you're a drug addict, that's where the change first happens. So,
yes. Amen. Guys, throw in the comments, throw some love for Shane. Say thank you for coming here, Shane. And guys, if you enjoyed this, make sure you share it to anybody that would be blessed by this conversation like I was. Obviously, I got something out of this conversation, which is awesome. So, Shane, how can people find you?
Yeah, man, on Instagram and TikTok, it's Shane Havoc Mindset. You can go to havocmindset.com, and I'm Shane Fichter on Facebook and on LinkedIn. So
awesome.
Super glad to be here, man. I always love doing this with you. So, and I just love everything you're doing, man. I wanted to tell you that you're killing it, and I just love it. And I love that you're literally just following what you feel your purpose on earth is, despite having to make money. He's just like, you know what? I'm doing this and it's going to work.
Man, thank you, brother. Thank you so much for that. So I'm going to end the live and then we're going to stay on here for just a minute. Okay.
Okay.
Love you all. And make sure you continue living recovered on purpose.